This is Pivot Perspectives with Chris O'Byrne, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on their road to success, and get exclusive access on how to implement their success into your life and business. Pivot Perspectives is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Chris O'Byrne.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with me today.
No, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, to kind of get started, I'd really like to go back to childhood. So is there a story from your childhood that you feel was instrumental into developing you into who you are today?
Yeah, this one, when I read your pre kind of questions, this one made me think a little bit. But because I will admit I don't normally talk childhood things. So I talked to my wife, I talked to some other people, and then the epiphany hit me that when I was about 7 years old, my dad, one of my great power figures in my life, walked in from work one day, and I was always in athletics and everything else, soccer, baseball, football, track, you name it. And he said, "Hey, let's go check out this martial arts studio." And it was just completely out of the blue. And so I said, "Okay." And I went and met the instructor and all of that, and just fell in love. But I think as I reflected why that's important to me, from an early on, even though like 7 years old, is a brand new white belt with 1 day in Taekwondo. I looked at the black belts and went, "I want to be you guys." And so that drive through discipline and perseverance and problem solving and more, even at a young age, discipline was likely most effectively of all, really helped define who I am and turn me into a future Green Beret and turn me into a bunch of other things. I ended up teaching in my early 20s at a global martial arts academy, and ended up with a third degree in Taekwondo, a second degree in American Karate, and a first degree black belt in Hapkido as well. So it was a lifetime passion that sadly I don't get to practice martial arts as much lately as I'd like to, as I'm old and graybeard. But I think that was one of the most groundbreaking moments of my childhood. Was just, I'd been in state tournaments for sports and all that stuff, but just learning the inner focus, self-discipline, and mental awareness that it takes to be a pure martial artist, not a tournament competitor or something like that, and not just trying to win trophies, but to actually understand the discipline behind it. I probably still look back on some of those lessons I learned years ago at 47 years old now. So 40 years ago, it's been a good journey.
Absolutely. I also got my black belt in Taekwondo, just first degree, but
Yes.
I wish I had learned it as a child, because that discipline early on, I think, would have made such a difference in, the trajectory of my life. It still made a difference in my life, but the option of learning that as a child, I can see that being really significant, especially
I was a punk high schooler, and I almost didn't go too far over the edge, because at the end of the day, it was, what would my instructors think? What would the owner of the school think? Well, how was I representing? And more. So it always kept me in line through some pretty, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, right? It was different from now. Obviously, as a father of three now, I get to see that, but still, it kept me on the straight edge, even and off, away from the precipice, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So switching now to your business, what inspired you to start your business? And, kind of how did you go from that initial idea into making it into a reality?
So I teach project management, and I'll nerd out just for a moment and say that most people, we ideate very well and we implement very well, but we don't activate, concepts very well at all. We don't discern whether ideas are good or bad. So I was leaving my role as a chief operating officer in the Institute of Project Management, moving back to the US and figuring out a lot of stuff. And I kind of knew, and this sounds very prideful and selfish, I don't mean to, but I didn't want to work for anybody else. And simply, I saw a problem. I saw a problem in how things are being done. I saw a problem in a military community, in the civilian community in the States. It was suffering from a lack of relevance in project management training and overly bureaucratic and super expensive training. I've been in that field for a long time. And so, I jokingly tell other special operators when I teach them now that I'm the only guy I know that's actually taught project management on 6 continents around the globe. And as soon as those lazy scientists in Antarctica get off their butts and invite me down there, then I can check box number 7, right? But I mean, so I've got this crazy perspective. But again, once I saw a problem as a Green Beret, I'm like, oh, I can fix that. And it was just putting the I's together and dotting the T, or dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and making sure that everything was good, surrounding myself with great mentors, looking at, back to, we talked about Otis McGregor earlier and more, and socializing my idea, going to my wife, who's probably my biggest, supporter of all, and talking to her through things. And I'm blessed that she has a very good job as well. So, my entrepreneur forays, we've had very dry months, as every entrepreneur has had, and very lucrative months. But, there's always that stability in the household with her income and more. So it allowed me to kind of challenge it. But I tell every entrepreneur I coach that if you're not solving a problem, you're going to fail. And so I even developed a model off of that called a POD model off of reading all these books. And it's like, most entrepreneurs fail because they talk about their differences in their approach, but that should be the last thing you talk about, right? The first thing you should talk about to capture anybody's attention is in fact the problem that you're solving. Then you have their attention. You can talk to the offerings, the O in the POD model. What you're offering is to solve that problem. And you seal the deal by saying, I have empathy and authority. Here's my differentiators. Here's everything that I do differently, right? I'm a Green Beret. I used to work on Wall Street. I've co-founded a tech startup. I've taught on 6 continents, but we all start those conversations with all about us, and we never capture people's attention. We never solve that problem. And so it's always been first and foremost in everything that I do as an entrepreneur is, what exact problem am I trying to solve?
Yeah, and I imagine that even just your process of becoming an entrepreneur was very methodical, because that seems to be innate to you and how you operate. This is a side question. There are a lot of different options for project management software, Asana, Basecamp, it's,
Sure.
all of those. Do you have any preferences for, ones that you think are overall
I do.
the best?
I mean, yeah, I'm a diehard Mac user and Mac fan, so I love OmniPlan. If you're into Gantt charts and more, OmniPlan's a great software for that. To be very honest, I can't tell you the last time I started a project with Gantt charts, unless it was for a customer that was heavily reliant on Gantt. But I love Basecamp. And in fact, I have kind of a hip pocket full, like a referee flag, right? Like whatever that client needs and wants to, I have kind of my go-tos. I love OmniFocus for individual entrepreneurs because it's based off of David Allen's getting things done methodology, and it syncs across everything. So, if it's a solo practitioner who's not trying to communicate, I send them to OmniFocus if they're a Mac user. If they're, we recommend free and open source platforms as well. I like Trello better than Asana, probably. Monday.com is fantastic for teams. It gets a little bit pricey the more you raise. Projectmanagement.com is great for the budget. So it's kind of a hard question to answer, and I'm not dodging it, but it's based upon, budgets and whatever. With a small team that even I have, $45 per user per month for something like Monday can be a little bit prohibitive. And just want to make sure that you're best doing with there, because we've all been in a space to where some new tool or toy is incorporated and nobody wants to use it, and I've tried out Teams and Slack and every type of software system out there, Notion and Basecamp and everything, just to make sure that I'm in there. But Basecamp, for my general recommendations, Basecamp is hard to beat. It lacks some functionality that a lot of teams meet, but the ability for $99 a month, and I don't get paid for mentioning Basecamp. I'm not on some referral bonus with them, but $99 a month for unlimited users and unlimited projects, the ability to invite clients in and talk to things, and to be able to chat within a project to only those people within there. To me, that checks a whole lot of boxes for what most people and organizations need and can rely upon pretty easily.
Okay, that's great advice. Thank you. That's very in depth. And yes, every business, every entrepreneur is going to have different needs and different ways of working. And that's good advice.
But,
so
last comment on there.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Last comment is, I believe in my heart that stakeholder engagement is probably the most underlooked facet of proper project execution. And it's so simple and yet so crazy complicated at times as well. So driving anything that I do is how those people want to and need to communicate with stakeholders, and in a manner that's most beneficial to the stakeholders, depending on the power and interest that stakeholder possesses for each project. And that's quite frankly one of the ways that my training beats a lot of others is, in the last 6 weeks, I've trained probably 7 different, military units and corporate clients, and I get to see a whole lot of different perspectives, but uniform across is how do you communicate with stakeholders? Is it purely rank based, off that rank you have on your uniform? Is it hierarchy based upon the civilian organization and more? But you're not winning. 29% of projects fail across the globe because of poor communication, which is criminally stupid. We all have things in our pocket, our iPhones and more, that we can communicate now better than ever before. And yet more projects are failing because of a lack of communication. So driving any recommendation is that need for communication to occur effectively.
Do you have any tips for communicating effectively with the stakeholders?
Yeah, 100%. This sounds a little bit blunt, and I apologize. Get over yourself first. It's not about how you like to communicate, it's how they like to receive information. So I teach things like DISC and more, not just a one peg, round peg, round hole, but it's understanding whether that person's active or reflective, task focused or people focused, and triaging how you engage with them. Because if someone is reflective and people focused, you're going to have long conversations with them, diving deep into project methodology, even though you might not have the time and more. If somebody's task focused and active, you can hand them a piece of paper and say, email me any questions you have, and walk out of their office, and they're happy and you're happy. It's not about how you like to communicate. It's how that person needs to receive the information so that both is happening simultaneously.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that one. So in your opinion, what makes your business unique and valuable to your customers or your clients? How does it address a specific need or solve a particular problem?
So primarily, and the word just all over my website and more, is relevance, right? And again, I've already said it once this call, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but too many things are a round peg, round hole solution. Consultants come in and say, you have to use this acronym only, no matter what the business is, because they're proud of it and they're engaged with it and more. But we make sure that our training, anything that we do, any offering that we does, one solves a problem, and the offering is boutique enough that it's relevant and client focused for your organization and your industry to make you successful. And lastly, as a Green Beret and special operator and former GS-13 still in the special operations realm, we do everything from a unique perspective in that unconventional approach to problem solving. I tell clients, Einstein said you can't solve problems using the same thinking that you used when you created them. So having more MBAs and more come in and more of this type of, same type of person always trying to solve it. Nothing against MBAs in the world at all, but you need some different perspectives and diversity of thought to come in and look at that and go, tweak. And that's where a lot of military people, especially 20 years of war and more, come into organizations, and they're so successful because the organization could have been hung up on this problem for 6 hours or 6 months, and we go and tweak it just within a sudden look. And now magic is happening, communication is occurring, and deliverables are being delivered.
Oh, excellent. So switching gears just a little bit, can you share some key influences or mentors who've played a significant role in your journey and how they impacted your approach to business?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't like it when I start off with this, but the Lord, right? First of all, God. If I were more prideful or drank my own Kool-Aid too much, being a Christian man and a father, every day starts with giving thanks to the Lord for what He's given me and blessed me with, and every day ends with also giving thanks for what He's given me and blessed me with. I mentioned my dad. My dad was a Navy guy, worked for the government. He was on the first nuclear powered submarine, the Ethan Allen. Probably why I had cancer twice later on in life, but back in the 60s. So he had a crazy, unique approach, having grown up just dirt poor in the South and making something out of himself and rising different levels. Alan Weiss, the consultant author, I've never met personally, but I recommend anything that he says in any book that he writes. He's been around for 40 years doing this, and he just gives blunt so every engagement that I have with a client, I can almost reference back. I should probably pay Alan commissions at some point just from reading his books and quoting him so much. Dave Ramsey, I'm a Dave Ramsey master financial coach and operating my business off of some stuff that he wrote in Entree Leadership 15, 18 years ago now. So I love Dave's approach to a lot of stuff. I like how he looks at things in the problem lens, and staying out of debt keeps me fiscally secure. And again, making sure that I'm not I could be overly risk taking sometimes, that I don't take those risks that I know that aren't really for that time. Operating off of a debit card only, it kind of, when you see the money come out of your bank account immediately, instead of just adding up on credit or debt, hurts. And then Donald Miller, the author of Building a Story Brand, Marketing Made Simple, Business Made Simple, Otis McGregor is phenomenal. If you guys listening to this or hearing this, Otis is a founder of Tribe and Purpose. He's doing fantastic stuff as a Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel. Tanya Mazzolini, personal friend of mine since I was a kid in martial arts in Cleveland, Tennessee. She's amazing. She's a CPA and a chief financial officer for a not-for-profit. She's just a great human being. So again, it's just, no man's an island, right? So you got to surround yourself with the right people who have all those different approaches. But going back, like, I thank God every day, and I listen to people who have different perspectives to me, because I think that divisiveness that we're in as a country right now is doing more harm than good. That we should all have civil conversations and civil dialogues, no matter if you're right, left, or whatever in between. You should be able to agree in a common way forward without the violence and the inherent apathy or just antagonistic approach to everybody that you see nowadays. If they don't believe in you, then they're wrong all of a sudden. So, long answer to the question, but nonetheless,
great answer to the question. Great answer. So yes, and even in my own life, my Christian faith is first and foremost in everything I do, and it's changed my business. Because initially I wasn't as close to the Lord as I wanted to be, and then something happened and that shifted, and I came back many years ago. And it drives everything, my relationships, my communication, how the ethics of running my business, all of those pieces. And
Amen.
It's been wonderful. So looking back on your entrepreneurial journey, what would you say has been the most valuable lesson that you've learned?
Again, I thought with this one a little bit internally as I was walking my dog earlier and stuff and prepping for the call. And I'm like, I think the simple answer is just to believe in yourself. And a lot of people would think, I have a black belt, I have a master's degree, I was a Green Beret, I had a very high level of security clearance, I worked for the government. I left the Institute of Project Management as the chief operating officer, so third in charge of their global activities and more. And so everybody would, I guess, picture that ego, would just be there. But like everybody else in the world, I tend to suffer from imposter syndrome a lot of time and just wonder, like I said earlier, if somebody buys a book that I've written, I almost vomit in my mouth and want to immediately give them a refund, right? Even though I know that, I obsessed over the book and worked thousands of hours on that. But to believe in myself. And then anybody that follows me on LinkedIn will tell you that about twice a month, I'll just post, stay the course, keep the faith. And people always respond very well to that, because there's a bunch of cliches I could throw out, like it's always darkness before the dawn and all this stuff, right? But when you're on that journey and you know what right looks like, and you've armed yourself with the right things, you're undertaking the right efforts, you surround yourself with the right people, you've got the right attitude, the right motivation, and more. And then hurdles start coming your way, like we all know in the military that no plan survives contact with the enemy. And I tell civilian clients that no business plan survives contact with the customer. So, it's the same thing, civilian and military, like no plan is infallible. Plans are nothing, planning is everything, is Dwight Eisenhower said. So stay the course, keep the faith, but, always be able to adjust fire and move out in the right direction when you have to, but you have to believe in yourself. And if you don't, you're going to always suffer the consequences of it. And I've taken times in building teams several times over to where I've let my teams dictate my priorities and dictate stuff, and nothing against my team. And it's not aimed at any one person, but I didn't listen to myself and I was less successful as a result. And so when you're in that position to experience and you have the skills and the knowledge to actually do the right things, you have to believe in yourself. And a part of that is communicating, staying the course, keeping the faith, and Donald Miller, I always tell clients, in building a story brand, Donald Miller says you have to tell people things on your team on average 7 times. And I joke and say, it's more like 77 times. You always have to just tell people things over and over and over. And then that's just part of that, staying the course. And again, it drives back to problem solving, be irrelevant, communicating, doing all that stuff. But when you chart your path and you know that God's on your side and what right is, keep the faith. Keep the faith that you're going to be successful. Keep the faith that you're going to do the right things, that you're going to provide for your family. And that also allows you to be deliberate and intentional in what you do, spending time with your family, not at the cost of your business, not trying to grow one at the expense of the other, and knowing that, work-life balance is a fallacy, that there's never going to be a work-life balance. You have one life to live. But I tell clients and people, I can make another dollar, but I can't make another minute. God hasn't granted me that gift just yet. So being hyper intentional and deliberate with my time and knowing where I want to spend it, and then just keeping the faith that, it'll all work out in the end.
That's great advice. Stay the course, keep the faith. You mentioned your books. Can you tell me a little more about them?
Sure. So I have I started a new series called the FM series. It is based off the military field manuals, and they're quick reads. So less than 100 pages. The first one was FM 18 for the Special Forces MOS 18 series -1. So FM 18-1 was like strategic guide to vision, and it puts in simple tactical terms like, by this date, we will do this, resulting in this. And it takes John Cotter's change models and everything into place for achieving your vision and puts it all into a roadmap that you can use, because stupidly, we don't look at something as simple as downhill skiers, right? Like when they're hitting the slalom gates, those operational waypoints that they have to hit, they're doing the right tactical efforts to hit the gates they need to reach the bottom of the mountain. They don't just get to the top, let the gate go and wing it. They have a plan, but they adjust the plan to where they need to. But you can watch in their legs and their skis and more like how that looks like. And so FM 18-2 coming out July 4th is getting out of debt. No offense to Dave Ramsey and his team. I love Dave, but I'm kind of taking a parting shot at Dave's wisdom over 30 years, because he hasn't changed his platform in 30 years. And he doesn't, even in the 7 baby steps, mention the word budget. And so one of the things that he talks about all the time is budgeting, and it's a driving factor in everything he does. But no concept survives 30 years of growth, especially in the technology base that we have, but without adjusting a plan a little bit. And personally, I feel 7 steps is too much. So my approach on debt is a Green Beret's approach on getting out of debt, living within your means, get focused, get organized, get future looking instead of backwards looking, and then just go from there. And then published last year was a book I had called The Hill. The Hill was my journey, and early in the special operations day, I came off the streets as a civilian and got signed up for the 18 X-ray program, meaning that once I passed entry basic training in airborne school, I could go trial for selection without the normal rank requirements as a sergeant and time in service that you normally had to have. And so going to the special operations preparation and conditioning course, there's some activities that happened the very first day that made me doubt that I was ever eligible to be a Green Beret or anything else, and put the fear of God in me. And so this hill just crushed us every single day in training. But I finally, it's cliched, but learned to enjoy the view from the top instead of worrying about what the bottom looks like, and just realizing that all things end in more. So that was more designed for a younger crowd, but even adults come back to me and say that they got a lot out of it and more. And then the original book was just a collection of articles that I had written just when I was on a keynote speaking tour, and more just for, I'm an author, I've written this stuff, and you can see what before you hire me and more. So I'm less proud of that one in the early days as I am the FM series. And my big book, Boom, is coming out very soon. It's my model on transforming business based upon a model that I created called the See and Act model, based off a course that I used to run called Creating Elite Organizations, based upon the special operations principles. So I love writing, and it makes me happy, even though fearful when people read it.
Oh, awesome. And I'm assuming those are all on Amazon.
They are. The first 4 on Amazon. FM 18-2 comes out July 4th, and Boom comes out in September. So they're coming quickly. But the ones published already are already out there. And ready to go. They're also on my website at dolcoach.com.
Yeah, I'll make sure that those links are available. And so, yeah, you mentioned your website is, how can people learn more about you? Just by going to dolcoach.com?
dolcoach.com. Everybody asks me what DOL stands for. It's the oppressor libere, the special forces motto to free the oppressed. Again, I'm a no debt guy. Debt is oppressive. So as a financial coach, I'm happy to say on the pro bono side, I've helped over 500 military families get out of debt in the last several years. And then also I view that poor practices, non-productive activities, and being inefficient is also oppressive to your life. So when you're spending time at work because you don't know how to work and you don't know how to be deliberate, intentional, and more, that's also oppressing you from spending time with your family and reaching the success that you kind of deserve. So dolcoach.com is my website, and it's easy if anybody wants to email me, scott@dolcoach.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing all that with us.
No.
Really incredible value. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. God bless. I appreciate it. So
thank you.
I'll have to AAR this and find out what I said that I thought was stupid, and then listen to it later on.
Thanks for listening to Pivot Perspectives with your host, Chris O'Byrne. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advice on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.